I'm going to talk a little bit about ranch water quality planning here in Siskiyou County, and then NRCS Heather Wood is going to talk about web soil survey. So first up is David Lewis. And David, you can tell us more about yourself because I can't.
Well, first, I want to, can you all hear me? Is this okay?
Yeah.
All right. I just want to thank Steve and Ann and everyone for the invitation up. I come from the land of blue cheese and oysters, the dairies, and we have oyster production in Tomales Bay. And to get to be with you all where some of our alfalfa and other things come from has been a real good treat for me. So I appreciate the opportunity to be up here with you. I work a lot with this partnership. Our local resource conservation district, our Natural Resources Conservation Service office. We have a livestock advisor, number of other partners, cattlemen. We work with the ranching community, the grazing livestock community on a lot of kinds of planning and stewardship of the watersheds for a number of reasons. And so what I'll share with you today comes from that experience. It's planning that we do. But I've integrated it with the tools that your local resource conservation district have pulled together as adaptation of the plans that we've done in Tomales. And so that way, you're getting tools that are relevant for you, that are here, accessible for you. So I hope that helps. I want to make sure this meets your needs. You're sticking around. It's been a really dense day already. So stop me, ask questions, share with me what you want to know.
Yeah. What's your background as far as training?
Sure. So I'm an extension advisor with Cooperative Extension. I've been with them for 15 years. My background is soils and hydrology at Davis. Also a geology degree from a small school in Minnesota, Carleton College. Peace Corps volunteer in between those 2 degrees, and consulting geohydrologist and some other things. So I was in West Africa for a little bit. I don't know if that helps. So I work a lot. I started even up in the Garcia River working with ranchers there as they were dealing with some ranch planning issues. And that's just built upon other experiences. So I think first point is there's a lot of partnership that needs to happen at times. This group came together in response to some water quality regulations, and we developed the plan I'll share with you as a way to do it in a feasible, reasonable way, a way that something you all can go away and just do at your kitchen table, really. It's stuff you already know. JW hit upon it this morning about planning. Well, you've probably already got this stuff in your files. You've already got some things you've done that maybe it's good to get documented. You have some other projects that you probably want to do, and this is the kind of thing you can do in these plans that's really helpful. So let me just kind of work through it and see if it gets us somewhere. Again, I want it to be useful for you today, and I'll help pick up the time a little because I'll cut some things out, so that way we don't run too far over. So some reasons to do planning, this ranch water quality planning. And admittedly, you all have a TMDL here, a total maximum daily load, and you have a conditional waiver. So you have some regulatory impetus. Okay, fine. We have the same, and it's happening statewide. I think what's more important is these other 2 to be thinking about is these plans are opportunities for you to make improvements on your operations. Doing them in a way that you use the same kind of language as technical and financial assistance organizations gets you ready to access those resources really quickly. There's times when I think it's really important that we as agricultural communities start telling our story. I think too often there's assumptions that we're not doing anything, that we're not working on our ranches around stewardship and conservation. And these kinds of plans are ways for us to document that and be able to tell our story. I think that's really important. And I've already mentioned the way these plans help you access existing programs, financial and technical assistance. And I hope today, and you can pick any one of the talks today, but managing for water quality is closely integrated with managing production, whether it's water conservation and how we use water in irrigation, as Steve shared, or again, our first presentation about planning for production, setting production goals. Those go closely; they're closely tied. So with water quality management, so I think these are more important reasons to do water quality management than some sort of regulatory response. And if nothing else happens in the next 15 minutes, just keep this in mind, that a ranch plan, a water quality plan, has a map. It's got some sort of list of projects that you're working on or want to work on. And it's got some sort of, up here, it's got some sort of monitoring. Annually, you're just checking on things. You're making sure your practices that you've implemented, that the projects you've already put in place are working, and you're starting to think about the next ones that you want to do. I could go away now, maybe I should. Just turn it over. That's what I'm trying to say is it's really this simple. There are some other resources and some details we'll get into, but keep that in mind. So maps, we've got a lot of different ones. We're going to hear about some great soil resources here towards the end of the 30, 40 minutes that we'll be together for the last part. But you can have aerial photographs, you can have maps that got the topo lines, and you can have soil maps. So there's a lot of different kinds of resources. Any one of these works. It just depends on what you like, or you might want the combination. You probably already have one or all of these. Again, what I'm using today is an adaptation from plans that we've pulled together, and a template we've pulled together in Tomales, but in this case it's available through the Shasta Valley RCD, so I'm going to kind of walk through this. I won't go through it in great detail, but just so you know, this is the elements of a plan, and you can start to think about using them. So you've got just a real simple property information section, and I don't need to go through this. I know this is hard to read, but it's a chance for you to document the parcels that you want the plan to pertain to. A ranch plan can have parcels that are contiguous, or you can pull different parcels from around the area if that's the way your ranch and your operation is divided. There's a spot in here to designate a tenant if you've got that situation. And in many cases, a plan can be owned and managed by the tenant or by the leasee as well. So that's just something you'd want to work out. And then down at the bottom, there's a section for the different kinds of plans you already have. You might already have some different things that you've been doing. So I'm just going to click through these. I've said them verbally, but just again, the parcels are covered, the land ownership's documented. If you've got a tenant-manager relationship, that can go into it. And then existing plans. The next section is really your farm goals. And again, we've heard a lot about that today. And it's a section where you can start to think about, your production goals. We hit upon that this morning. You've got some life goals, quality of life goals. Well, I don't think about the quality of my life. Well, maybe it's time. Take a little bit of time. Work with your family. Set out some quality of life goals. What's the long-term goals for the ranch, for the farm? This is what this section's about for. And then, of course, the natural resource goals. Things you've already set out that you may already have planned. Future natural resource goals. So just a goal-setting section. And then we get into a series of sections that's really taking stock. It's about an inventory, a baseline. And again, I'm not going to go over these in real detail. What might be helpful is another time is going out in the field and working on these together. If you have questions, please be willing to be available and follow up with me. But the first part of that baseline, that inventory you want to take, is just a field of pasture inventory. And this is where the plan is designed to be a useful tool for you. There we go. This worksheet lets you kind of work through by field, by pasture, and just take stock of what's going on there. There's a field number, pasture number. There's also a name, a location, and you might say north pasture, south pasture, but you want to get them all listed. And what this does is if you work through it, you start to get a feel for what ways you're using those fields, the soils that are there, the irrigation systems, the slope, and it starts to let you think, well, am I using each pasture the same way or differently, and why? Am I getting maximum use out of it? There's even ability here to do a little bit of stocking density and estimate if I'm getting good utilization across all the fields and all the pastures. So again, this is an inventory tool, getting the baseline for your ranch and your farm operation. Once you've got that inventory taken, you want to then go out and do this is where the water quality kinds of assessments come in. We want to just kind of make some simple assessments about whether there's any issues out there. And there's 3 sections of this, and I know you can't quite see it, but these are real simple questions. The first area would be about sediment. The plan covers a number of different nutrients, the first one being sediment. This question here just says, bare soil visible through the rainy season? Yes or no? Just a real simple. And I bet if you can go out there and step on a plant, not step on bare soil, you probably answer no to this question. That's the kind of simple assessment that you want to go out and do right now. Is there the chance of bare soil being exposed and therein impacting the stream or not? And you can work through it for nutrients and pathogens as well. Generally, when we're managing for manure, if we manage the same way, we're taking care of both nutrients and taking care of pathogens. And a simple, again, very simple questions. Corrals used through the winter. Well, in some places they are, and we'll talk about managing them in a way that prevents impacting the streams and the rivers. But again, these are just your first take. Do I have some impacts out there I want to think about and be taking some time to address? There's also a part, in addition to that assessment, there's a stream assessment. So we've taken some initial inventory. We're now down to assessing for potential water quality impacts, and we're into a stream assessment. And these are also similar yes/no questions, and I'll just read you the top one here. It says, bare soil along banks of stream. Yes, no. And so where you might have a few of those start to become areas that you'll want to work on. So is this feeling pretty simple? I know it might be new to you. Some of you might have already done this. The last one that's really kind of unique here that we don't have down where I'm at right now, we don't have this tailwater assessment. We're slope challenged and water limited, so we're not irrigating much. And we don't go out and I don't have the luxury of the water that you all do to irrigate here. We do get almost 36 inches of rain, so different luxury. But this tailwater assessment form is there for you just to get documented what tailwater neighborhood you're in and some other aspects. There's some simple just indication of what kinds of management strategies you already have for your irrigation. And so hopefully that just, again, keeps building on this assessment, this inventory. And now we get to that I've talked about just simply a map a little bit. I'll come back to that. We start to now document. This is where you start telling your story. This is a section that lets you look at completed projects. You've already probably put in some alternative water sites. You maybe already put in some different kinds of irrigation systems. You want to get that documented. You want to make sure you've got that so you can tell your story. That's what this part of the Ranch Water Quality Plan does. The companion piece to that is this future water quality projects. This is where you're starting to make goals for yourself, projects that you may want to take, you may want to do. You want to even start to set some priorities with them. And so we'll come to some examples here in just a minute. But with this future list, it's really important just to get them all down and start to set some priority, and then begin to think about when am I going to implement? How can I implement? Some of these you can do on your own, that you've got the ability and the resources just to do. Some of these you may want to do through some assistance programs. So let's talk about projects a little bit, and these are going to be photos from down Marin, Sonoma County, so they may or may not look similar to up here, but I just want to start you to think about what you've already done on your ranch and maybe projects that you want to work on your ranch. In this case, we're looking at just road drainage. Roads can be a really primary source of sediment delivered to streams and creeks. When we talk about current management affecting sedimentation to creeks, it's really our road systems. That's probably job one for what we need to work on. So here we've got an inboard ditch. It collects runoff during storms and goes down to a relief culvert. So you just want to start thinking, well, where does that relief culvert go? Does it open up onto a flat pasture and never ever connect to the creek? Or does it connect to the creek? Well, if it does, then we want to start thinking about how we affect the amount of water in this ditch and how much sediment's in it. So roads become an important part of managing for sediment. Similarly, we might have relief culverts that do this, where maybe we didn't get them installed to grade. We've created a high energy kind of situation that's eroding underneath it. That's also delivering sediment to a creek. So these kinds of what we call shotgun culverts and things like that. So again, think about your roads as being the source for sediment on our watersheds, on our ranches. And if we can manage for those, we've probably taken care of most of the sediment that our current management's involved with. When we think about nutrients and pathogens, we can talk about a couple different kinds of sites. I hinted at corrals briefly. We know these are really important units. management units on our ranch. We need to bring animals together to do, treat them or even to ship them. So we have these kinds of setups where we're at. We want to think about where they're located. How close are they to a creek? This happens to be a creek, but it's a very flat area. And we want to manage the run-on, how much water is coming off of a road onto it. If we can reduce the amount of water that's coming onto the site, you're reducing the ability of water to even pick anything up and move it. And then we want to think about where the runoff is going. Again, if it's going through filter strip, if it's going through a lot of vegetated grass, it's probably trapping the sediment, trapping the manure, and there in this really important management unit is not causing any water quality impact. And then probably a look across the landscape, and this is always a big concern for folks that are doing water quality plans. There's these unstable areas. We have these hill slopes that kind of give way during storms. They're on some steep slopes. You might have some different kinds of situations here. The concern is, wow, that's not my management. Do I have to fix that? Do I have to go after that? No, that's not generally what this is about. It is good to note that. It's, again, part of telling your story. We want to focus on what our current management, what we can do to improve conditions. We want to kind of document what the background is out there, too. That helps tell that fuller story, gives that full context of what's going on the landscape, what's going on our ranches. And then for managing the creeks, managing the riparian areas, there's other things you've probably already done, and so I'm just hopefully triggering your memory about projects that you've already implemented. But we develop water. We either have developed springs, or maybe if you've got the water right to pull water out of the stream, we move a trough up and out of the stream. We don't let the livestock go down and access that water. So water developments like this are a real positive way to manage for water quality. This is some exclusionary fencing along the creek that then let this woody vegetation, the willows come in. So these are the kinds of projects you could do. Stream crossings. We know that we've got pastures on both sides of the creeks. So sometimes we put in a wet crossing, and I'll take you down inside this one. But here we are up looking down into the stream, down into the corridor. This is the way it's fenced off. The animals literally are in there for about 20 or 30 minutes as they're pushed through. This is what it's like down inside there at that crossing. Generally very little manure. The animals, a little bit of hoof action here, but a lot of shade. The animals just make their way on through. They get on the other side of the other gate. It's closed. So again, managing for water quality through a wet crossing that's used several times of the year, but just really quickly. Again, a type of project that you could be documenting that you've probably already done or something similar. And then lastly, we've got eroding stream banks. This is the outside bend of a big stream. This happens to be on a UC property up at Hopland. So these things are happening all over the place, and our equal owner, how do I want to say this, equal opportunity, equal owner, doesn't matter who it is, these forces are out there. But you want to document that maybe you've got these and that you've taken some steps to fix them, where you've gotten some some vegetation growing. In this case, there was a line of boulders put in the bottom, and then those were also armored with these willow plantings. That bank's now stabilized. It's not eroding. It's not depositing sediment into the creek. The creek's actually being held with those boulders a little bit off of that bank. And the other thing, what I'm showing you here, and I'll talk about monitoring in a minute, but here's a before and after. I can't think of a better way to tell the story. All you got to do is show those two pictures, and here's what you've done. And I've shown you a series of pictures of how you can use photo monitoring. Again, just to document what you've done. I'm going to kind of skip over that ranch map, but you've got a worksheet, a page in here that just lets you document what kinds of maps you have on the property and which ones you want to get. I do want to talk about monitoring a little bit more. Since I hinted at the photo monitoring, that's a really important part of it. What's being recommended up here, and generally what we follow as well, is a combination of monitoring both during the dry season, a couple times. You want to walk your ranch, you want to get out there and look at some things, make sure practices are in place the way they should be, kind of getting ready for the winter. And then as the winter comes on, you want to go out at least once and check. Are things holding together? Did that culvert that I fixed, did it stay the way I wanted it to? You know, other things, you know, did the off-site water, the pumps, everything working in the summer the way they're supposed to? That's what this monitoring helps you do. And then you want to do a little quick stream survey. You want to take a minute to look upstream, downstream. Are the waters coming on and off the ranch in a way that looks like, you know, I'm not really having any impact? So use this monitoring to your benefit to make sure that your investment in time and money is having the impact that you want it to. Go out there and capture those photos at different times of the year. Capture the practices as they're responding to rainstorms. That's what you use this monitoring for. And again, I'm about done. I really did try to pick it up a little and let you guys get your day back to you. But keeping it simple, if you've got a map, if you've got a list of projects that you want to work on and ones that you've already done, and you're out there monitoring, you're out there just kind of just tracking what's going on and tracking next year's project and the work, you've really got a ranch plan. That's what a ranch plan is. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be more than that. So with that, I think we are back on schedule, so I want to slow down and see if you have any questions from me about Tomales or how the ranching community is responding there. Give you a chance to learn about what we've been going through.
How is the ranch community responding there?
Yeah, we've had about 80% participation. I think part of it is the partnership that led it. I mean, I didn't mention, you know, Farm Bureau's on there, cattlemen's. We all got together way ahead of the regulations, and I think, you know, whether we like doing this or not, we were able to help the regional board in San Francisco warm to the idea of being feasible or reasonable. And then we were there as organizations to go and help do the plans, to work with the ranching community to do them. So we've got a land trust that's working with some of the property owners and RCD. Our office is helping to do some. We're now working in the Sonoma and Napa Creeks as well, and similar kind of about 60 to 80% participation. Where it's, you know, where it's helping the most is it's actually garnering some more resources to do projects. The off-site water development's been really useful. Even where you can start to do some fencing, and I'm not just saying exclusionary fencing, but using cross fencing, setting up pastures in the right way so you can move through them effectively. Those have been things that have been well received.
Now, in your area, this ranch plan, it stays with the rancher, it doesn't go to your
That's right.
office?
Yeah, the ranch plan, and it would never go to extension office. That's not who and what we're about. But in this case, the regional board was really receptive to the plan staying on farm. And that's stayed true so far, and I think it will. I think that's understood. It's a little bit of proprietary information, and they get that, and they do that for other industries, where they allow the plans to stay on the site. So that's been a success, I'd say. Yeah, the monitoring, I should say, has been useful. You know, you could require some sort of in-stream water quality monitoring, but because compliance is implementation of practices, monitoring is about documenting that practices were implemented. Photos and a little bit of record keeping. That's been enough for monitoring. There is some other efforts where some in-stream water quality monitoring is being done by the regional board or by another organization. But for the rancher, it's about practices and documenting that practices are going in. And that's been, I think, also something that has been well received.
What region are you in?
So Tomales Bay and Sonoma and Napa are in the San Francisco region, which is Region 2.
You mentioned about 80% compliance. What sort of efforts are there on the 20% that are saying I'm not, it's in my head?
In that case, regional board staff, not the partnership, but regional board staff that's responsible is starting to go around and send letters and make visits. And in some cases, what they're finding out is that those are people that the whole process didn't even apply to them. They're not grazing, you know, whatever reason their ranch isn't big enough to fall underneath the regulation process. Yeah. I've heard of no action at this point, and I don't believe the board would take any action except to ask that you become compliant through the planning process. Yeah.
You mentioned oyster farming in Falls Bay as one of the reasons they're doing these ranch plans and reducing nutrients to the bay. Is there any indication that the water quality for the oyster farmers is getting better, or are we there yet?
There's two data sets that are out there. One is not in the bay where the oysters are, but a watershed to the north, and the nutrients have improved. In Tomales Bay, what's been good as an indication is that the data set there, bacteria is staying constant, it's not going up. We still get these incredible, I mean, imagine December, this December that we had. It's pretty hard to stop anything from coming down the hills. So those are still times when the oyster leases need to be closed. But at this point, the way the regulations are and all the practices have gone into place, the oyster beds are staying open more often than they were 10 years ago. So that's the other way we can document some benefit. We still get these gully washers that require closure of the oyster beds. Yeah. And that monitoring, that water quality monitoring, the board is doing. Regional board staff is doing. Yeah.
Has the Water Board instituted a breaker feed in on their plan?
That's a really good question. And this waiver and all this work went in before the fee directive from the state board came down. So no, there is no fee yet for this waiver.
This is a TMDL waiver, this
Yeah.
isn't an irrigated lands.
Right. This is a conditional waiver through TMDL. And so is everybody, some folks sound like they're really well versed in this. Let me back up. And when I say conditional waiver, does everybody know about that? No? Yes?
A lot of people probably don't.
Don't? Okay. So you know about your total maximum daily load that you have, and those of you that have participated maybe know that you have a conditional waiver here. The conditional waiver, and Andy, you asked a question, so I'm going to, when I don't get it right, I'm going to have you. Andy's from the regional board. I think most of you know him. The regional board develops the TMDL as a process to identify the sources of impact and the allocation of impact that come from each source. And then it usually has an implementation plan in it for how to address that impact. In most cases in California, the implementation plan calls for a conditional waiver, and the waiver is the tool that the board uses to say what are the actions they want you to take. And in most cases, the waiver is set up a ranch water quality plan. I know I've glossed over about 15 years of legislation, but in general, that's the course. So in Tomales Bay, we had it all set up prior to the state board saying they were going to ask for fees. And in fact, we negotiated with this waiver to have no fees collected. But the state board has issued a directive about fee collection that will affect waivers going forward. And probably it's in the irrigated lands program already.
And when you renew the conditional waiver.
And when a waiver is renewed, it will trigger the fee. Anything I missed, Andy?
Yeah, you're right, there's no fees at this time, but you don't know what Sacramento's going to do. It's not up to the regional board to decide whether or not they're going to have to implement fees. And with the new waiver that we just adopted recently, we're taking a different approach than we were before. We're not trying to contact all the landowners in the watershed and have them fill out letters of intent to supply and so forth. We just don't have the resources to work with everybody. So what we're doing now is we're prioritizing the areas we're working on. Our high priority area is in the upper watershed below Grinnell, Parks Creek, where the coho habitat is, and we're gradually going to work our way downstream. And we too definitely have some great partners out there, like David has in Marin County and so forth, that are doing a lot of work, the RCD and the agencies in RCS, the Nature Conservancy. There's a whole lot of work going on, and is also bringing in a lot of money into the community to do restoration work, tailwater work with the RCDs, assisting landowners in reducing tailwater, fencing, and those kind of things. So we are relying on these other agencies, as is the Bay Area Regional Water Board, to implement the program and to do their cooperative efforts. And right now, our board is fairly pleased with the progress that is being made. So we recognize there's a heck of a lot more work to do. So if you have projects, you might want to contact some of these agencies that offer assistance, like the Shasta Valley RCD or Natural Resource Conservation Service.
So I'll definitely stick around afterwards if folks want to come up and talk to me about Tomales Bay and some of the things we're doing there. What I want to go back to, and thanks Andy, is there's lots of reasons to be doing this, and you're already doing planning for lots of reasons on your ranch, on your farm. These tools are available to you, and that's why I want to maybe ask Ann to start to come up, and she'll talk to you a little bit more. Everything I shared with you, the templates, come from what's available through the Shasta RCD program. They're adapted from the Tomales program, and we've been really lucky that they've worked there so far. There's always going to be changing environment on the regulatory side, but planning for your production goals and your stewardship goals are only to your benefit. So that's why this is important to do even now. And again, water quality management's integrated with the production goals anyway, in terms of using the water and the soils in a way that helps you with your viability, helps you bring profit to the ranch in the long run. I think it's very useful to think about how we maybe can get back into the soil what we've been using for a while, and the same can happen for other resources as we look out across the ranch. So I'll stick around, and thank you. I hope this helped and set you up with what you needed, and